Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News. This week's headlines. An Oklahoma bill would fine teachers $10,000 for teaching anything that contradicts religion. Ted Cruz wants truckers to starve out people in Vancouver with empty shelves. Don't say gay. Biden denounces the hateful new Florida bill. An El Salvador woman punished under strict abortion law has been freed after 10 years. 5 rangers and a soldier were killed in an attack in Benin, the park management says. Violent clashes over the hijab ban in southern India forced schools to close. In Afghanistan, evidence mounts of Taliban reprisal arrests and killings. The murdered doctor, hundreds at Gary Jenkins Cardiff vigil. The church should introduce gay marriage blessings sooner rather than later. In England, that is. Oklahoma State Senator Rob Standridge, a Republican, has introduced a bill that would allow people to sue teachers if they offer an opposing view towards religious beliefs held by students. In the Students' Religious Belief Protection Act, teachers can be fined a minimum of $10,000 per incident per individual, and the fines would have to be paid from their personal resources. If the teacher can't pay the fine, they would be fired. It will also allow parents to demand the removal of any books perceived as anti-religious. This includes topics like evolution, the Big Bang, and even birth control. The bill does not specify what deeply held beliefs are, but it is bound to change how subjects like history, science, and health are taught. Currently, the bill has no sponsors and has been referred to the Senate Education Committee of Oklahoma. If passed, this act, which has been referred to as necessary for the preservation of the public peace, will take effect immediately. Former Canadian citizen and current US Senator Ted Cruz, Republican, Texas, has agitated in favor of protesting Canadian QAnon truckers, suggesting that the truckers ought to leave the people of Vancouver without food as a punishment for the government's COVID-19 vaccine mandates. The dispute began when Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart tweeted out to truckers that 95% of Vancouver is vaccinated and that Vancouver doesn't want you here. Make your point and then go home. In response, Cruz then tweeted out the threat that folks in Vancouver might feel differently with empty shelves. US President Joe Biden has condemned a Florida bill that would ban discussion of sexual orientation in primary schools as hateful to LGBT students. Governor Ron DeSantis has signaled his backing for the measure, and it appears to have enough support to pass through the state's Republican-led legislature. Activists have dubbed it the Don't Say Gay bill and warn that it will stigmatize LGBT people and issues. But its proponents say the legislation is about protecting parental rights. The proposal was introduced in the State House of Representatives last month. An identical version advanced to the state Senate on Tuesday. In a Twitter message to the LGBT community, especially the kids who will be impacted by this hateful bill, Mr. Biden vowed to continue the fight for the protections and safety you deserve. At a news conference earlier, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, "Every parent hopes that our leaders will ensure their children's safety, protection, and freedom. Today, conservative politicians in Florida rejected those basic values by advancing legislation that is designed to target and attack the kids who need support the most." State laws that ban or constrain the discussion of LGBT life in classrooms, sometimes referred to as no promo homo laws, are not uncommon. Several were introduced in the 1970s and 80s, closely correlated with anti-gay rights activism at the time, but many have long been repealed. Currently, 4 US states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Texas, have laws on the books that expressly prohibit or limit sex education to heterosexual activity. Last year, Tennessee and Montana passed laws that allow parents to opt their children out of discussion on sexual orientation and gender identity. The Florida bill goes a step further, allowing parents to directly sue school districts and seek damages if they believe an educator has broken the law. The situation is different here in the UK. See this video.
Within primary school, I don't think the topic of being LGBT plus ever came up, but also it was towards the end of my time there that I started becoming aware of it. In high school, homophobia was very normalized in daily conversation in the sense of, oh, don't be gay, that's so gay. But also the topic wasn't taken seriously. I remember we did have posters around, and that was as far as it went, in the youth center of some people are gay, get over it. And people would often stick that on each other as a joke. Things like that is what made me see coming out as never being an option. That was also because people who were LGBT plus were often bullied, those who were open, but there was just a constant gossiping about who else was and why they were probably, and it's created quite an environment of paranoia. I couldn't socially afford to come out because I'd be completely outcast. People wouldn't want to be seen with me because they might be thought that they were also LGBT plus. I actually returned to work at my old primary school recently, and it hugely resonated with me that I saw a poster there from Stonewall saying, in Welsh as well, different families, the same love, and it showed different combinations of parents, which included gay parents, and that was very moving and significant for me to know that that it was being normalized, and that they were starting to get parents who were of the same gender, and for that it was being ensured that children, before they're taught to hate, were being made to understand that.
El Salvador has released another woman who was imprisoned for aggravated homicide after suffering an obstetric emergency and being accused of aborting her pregnancy in a country where abortion under any circumstances is banned. The woman had served more than a decade of a 30-year sentence. She was the 5th woman released before completion of her sentence since late December last year. We celebrate that Elsie has been freed after being unjustly imprisoned a little more than 10 years, said Morena Herrera, director of the non-profit citizen group for the decriminalization of abortion. Her erroneous 30-year sentence for aggravated homicide has ended. Elsie's sentence was commuted and her rights restored. The woman was reunited with her family in Yayantique in eastern El Salvador on Wednesday. 5 rangers and a soldier were killed and 10 others wounded in an ambush by unnamed militants in a northern Benin park on Tuesday, the park management said in a statement on Wednesday. In the afternoon of Tuesday, February the 8th, a team of rangers was ambushed in Western National Park in Benin while carrying out a patrol at the northern limit of the park where it intersects with Burkina Faso and Niger, African Parks said. Tuesday's attack was the deadliest in a series of recent incidents blamed on militants in the north of the country, increasing fears about widening Islamist violence. African Parks, the South African non-profit group that manages the Western National Park and the Penjari National Park, said reinforcements from Benin's army and additional rangers have been deployed on the ground. Benin is among the West African coastal countries considered most vulnerable to a spillover of Islamist violence from the landlocked Sahel countries, where groups linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State exert influence over vast tracts of territory. The Indian state of Karnataka has shut its schools for 3 days after the regional government-backed schools imposing a ban on hijabs, leading to widespread protests and violence. The issue began in January when 6 female Muslim students staged a week-long process after they were told to either remove their headscarves or stop attending classes at a government college in the district of Udupi. Last week, colleges in the state began to enforce bans after some Hindu students, backed by right-wing Hindu groups, protested that if hijabs were allowed in the classroom, they should be allowed to wear saffron shawls. Saffron is the color that has become commonly associated with Hindu nationalism. On Saturday, in an apparent backing of schools' right to impose a ban, the Karnataka state government directed colleges to ensure that clothes which disturb equality, integrity, and public law and order should not be worn. Muslim students have argued that their right to freedom of religion is being violated, and they've taken the issue to the state high court. The students have argued that religious apartheid is being opposed in some colleges where women in hijabs are being allowed to enter but being kept in separate classrooms. The issue has proved highly inflammatory. At some colleges, Muslim students have been aggressively heckled, while in others, the protests between students turned violent, prompting police to charge at crowds and fire into the air. On Tuesday, the state chief minister, Basavaraj S. Bommey, suspended schools and colleges for 3 days and urged students and teachers to maintain peace and harmony. Karnataka is run by the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, which governs at national level too. Under its watch, there has been a rising tide of anti-Muslim violence and sentiment across India, where 12% of the population is Muslim. The BJP state chief in Karnataka, Nalin Kumar Katil, has said banning the hijab would ensure that classrooms did not become Taliban-like. By Friday, the 9 Muslim female students, out of more than 1,000 enrolled in the college, had been banned from entering through the school gates in a veil. The principal informed the women that it was a government order and that they must go to the bathroom to remove their hijabs or they could not attend class. After the girls refused to remove their headscarves, the gates of the school were locked to prevent them entering, and several police officers were called. Rabia Khan, a student at the college, said the school's leadership had come under pressure from right-wing Hindu groups. The Hindutva, hardline Hindu nationalist elements, don't have a problem with the hijab. They have a problem with our whole religious and cultural identity, she said. A number of women who participated in protests demanding women's rights in Afghanistan are missing. The Taliban deny they are holding them, and they also say they have granted a general amnesty to all those who worked with the previous regime. But the UN has raised alarm about a pattern of reprisals against activists, journalists, former government officials, and security forces. The BBC has investigated multiple incidents that have taken place recently, some in just the past couple of weeks. See this video.
6 months since they seized power, the Taliban appear to be cracking down. Evidence of reprisals is mounting. Activists marching peacefully for women's rights are disappearing. At least 4 women from this protest abducted in sudden raids. One of the women who took part in the protest in January, marching alongside the activists who've been detained. I know her. I've met her before. She's in hiding now, but she's agreed to meet us again. She shows us photos of the missing women. Since they were arrested, she's been changing locations every few days.
I received several calls from the Taliban who said, "Don't think we have lost you. We will find you." They have said they will punish each woman who took part in the protests. I have destroyed the SIM card I had. I fear for my life.
The sense of terror shared by those who served the previous regime. The seclusion of a graveyard offers relative safety. We hear chilling accounts that can't be spoken about openly. This man was close to a former policeman who was shot dead in recent weeks.
The Taliban came to his home one evening and took him away, saying they were taking him to the district police compound. Next morning, his body was found lying outside the house. He had been shot multiple times.
Local Taliban members told his family he was killed by a different Taliban unit. The policeman had been threatened and wanted to leave the country, but didn't have the means to do so.
The leaders have announced an amnesty, but the low-ranking Taliban do not respect the order and are killing former government officials.
The next day, we heard about multiple reprisal killings in a locality on the western edge of Kabul. The mood in the area was tense. Away from the eyes of Taliban patrol units, a local guided us. We asked him who was behind the murders. The Taliban, he said quietly.
Where is it?
We were taken to the location where the men were shot dead. If you look closely here, you can see bloodstains. It's the spot where 3 brothers from a family, one of whom was a member of the Afghan National Army, were killed just about 2 weeks ago. Multiple members of this community have told us that the attackers were from the Taliban. People here are terrified. The family of the victims has moved away from here. This has happened in the city of Kabul, but you won't find these incidents reported in the press. Through sources close to the brothers, we got these photos. Arsalan, to the left, was the soldier, seen here with Matiullah. Another brother, Shireen, was also killed. The deputy spokesman of the Taliban government didn't want to be seen with a woman, but was willing to answer my questions about the group carrying out revenge killings.
I strongly reject these allegations. The policy of Islamic Emirate is not to harm our people in any part of the country.
We have investigated these cases ourselves. If the Taliban is not doing this, then who is?
No one will find a case in which Taliban forces have systematically killed anyone after the general amnesty was announced.
The UN has said it's received at least 100 credible allegations of reprisals. And the more we looked, the more cases we found. A car was the only place this man felt safe to talk to us. He said a former intelligence officer he knew well was taken by the Taliban for questioning and then shot dead. I know I'm risking my life speaking to you, but I want the world to hear us and not recognize the Taliban as they are right now, the man told me. Living under them is like living in a cage.
Afghanistan is in a dire condition. See this video.
You've got this family, there's 7. You live on 3 loaves. Is that all?
No, bas kigim na ho father or mother padam mane problem raudi o children na dhude work kigi.
This is Afghanistan's finance ministry, ground zero, you could say, of the economic disaster that's overtaken the country. But I've come here to see the one man who thinks that he may be able to keep it from utter destruction. You stayed in Afghanistan and you're working for the other side.
I did this, and the basic motivation came from the fact that we can't turn our back to the people the same way that the leaders did.
I think the West is going to end up recognizing the Taliban government. If that's the case, then we better get on with it sooner rather than later. There's a great phrase, be magnanimous in victory. I think this is an occasion for us to be magnanimous in defeat.
I feel terrible for my people. It's so sad to see how dependent people are and how desperate people are. It's one of the most difficult times I've ever seen in my life.
I've been reporting on Afghanistan for more than 40 years, but I don't think I've ever felt before that I might be watching the destruction of a nation. And you know what? These people have been through so much in the past decades, and they simply don't deserve it.
Hundreds of people have joined a vigil to remember a doctor who was murdered in a homophobic attack in a Cardiff park. 3 people were convicted of killing Dr. Gary Jenkins after they attacked him in Butte Park on the 20th of July. Following the trial, LGBTQ plus community members spoke out about the abuse they say that remains prevalent today. The organisers of Sunday evening's vigil outside the National Museum in Cardiff said they hoped it would show a united stand against intolerance. The vigil included a minute's silence and gave people a chance to share their memories of Dr. Jenkins at the site near the park. The Church of England should introduce blessings for gay and lesbian marriages sooner rather than later, church commissioners have heard. In September last year, the Church of Wales voted to allow gay marriages to be blessed in its churches, with the first such ceremony happening in November. The Scottish Episcopal Church, which is the Anglican Church in Scotland, voted to allow same-sex marriages back in 2017. England is behind the times. Free Thought Hour. My interview show will be starting in a few minutes, so stay tuned to this channel. This week's guest is Guy Otten, the lawyer who has just launched a northern branch of Atheism UK. Come and chat with us or ask questions live. The GAN team will be back with our weekly news review next week. Please like, share, subscribe, and set the notification. This has been Global Atheist News. Thank you for watching.